Welcome to Chess Dojo's weekly rapid tournaments. It is Sunday morning for me, and tournaments start in half an hour. Let's check over here. The club, make sure all the tournaments look good. Rapid 13, rapid 7. Looks like the 1700 plus tournament may have had a problem, so I'm going to restart it. Sunday viewer rapid. Hey Oscar, I slept a little bit briefly. Sunday viewer rapid. 3 hours, 15 plus 5 starts today. I got to bed maybe a few minutes late. Okay, that seems to be everything we need to create that one. And let's go fix the MooBot link with the new play link. And I've been awake for about 5 minutes. This was a position from the end of classical games, our last show, Friday Night Fights. Let's also grab this link here, Chess Dojo Club. And put that here. That'll work for folks on YouTube who can't access a play command. Morning, Cross. I just got a message from you, right? I was just reading a message from you. Yeah, the questions were pretty simple, huh? Straightforward stuff. Let's see, what's going on in the chess world today? I did not touch my computer yesterday for an entire day, so I imagine that there's a round of the Uzbek Chess Cup from yesterday to catch up on. And, they've already finished today's round. They're so far ahead of me. I mean, yeah, in Hawaii, I'm even a few more hours behind stuff. "35 minutes, that's great. That sounds good, Richie. And Mr. Kelvin, no, all our stuff is rated, at least online. It won't affect any OTB ratings, but the tournaments on chess.com are chess.com rated. Congratulations on reaching 2,200. You did it. That's fantastic. Just fantastic. Don't let it hold you back. Celebrate. Have fun. Believe in yourself. You're worth 2,200 now. Yeah. So, let's see. I'm trying to look at a couple games while waiting for our tournament to start, but it's not proving easy. Let's try and watch events. Yeah. I mean, almost every single one of us has been through that, right? The caring about our rating too much on some particular day at some point. It's happened. It's happened to pretty much everybody. That we didn't play because of our rating or this or that. Wow, there's a U.S. Cadet Championships going on right now. That might be interesting to know. Who the top little kids are in the country. But there's a particular game I'm looking for here. James Altucher International. Oh, I didn't know they had that. Freestyle Chess Grand Slam Las Vegas. There it is, October Open. Yeah, Tani is in the U.S. Wow, this tournament is sick. Yeah, Tani's in the U.S. Cadet Championships, which is cool. Look at this. In the first round, Wang Hao, the first seed, lost. The second seed, Alexei Serrana, drew. And the third seed, Shant Sargsyan, lost. So the top seeds did really badly. Fifth seed, Bardia Daneshvar. Oh no, he's on my junior team. He lost. Oh my god, it's brutal. And what country is Knightage playing for now? It looks like he's changed his flag again. Bulgaria. Okay. Any advice on letting it go? You know, it's just little by little by little that we learn to let it go. There isn't like one answer or one thing that you do and then it's immediately fixed for you. It depends on the person. Oh shoot, I don't want to cover up my instructions for joining the tournament. All right. Let's mess with my display because I want to see this. Wang Hao, yeah, one of the top players in the world and one of the nicest, who wanted to retire due to health issues and then did keep playing a bit. I mean, he loves chess like crazy. And one thing you'll see Far Eastern is after that time, he did kind of stop playing in top level, super stressful events, right? He doesn't play in a bunch of closed super GM tournaments. He just occasionally plays at little events with normal people. But normal people have gotten so crazy, sickeningly strong. His opponent here is a 19-year-old who I've never heard of, FIDE master, and G'day, Fagri. But yeah, forgetting over it, Arsenal fan Richie, I think the number one most useful thing to think about, first of all, in chess, is that your opponents are people, and just imagine them as full real people instead of cardboard cutouts. Yeah, Warriors boy, I got you. Instead of as sort of like cardboard cutouts who are just there populating your life, think of them as real people, you know, who've trained and you know, dreamed and have the openings they like and the things about the game that they hate and that they love. And you know, just the more you think of them as real people, I think the better. That'll help. And then not only it should make the losses, it should definitely make the losses easier. It should also help with your with the entire sense of wanting to win and thinking or feeling like you should win. Because actually in chess, it's in life, in the world, it's just as good if your opponent wins as if you win. Like, you sit there playing the game and you're ready to give everything you have so that you win and your opponent loses. And it's like the most important thing in the world for you for 4 or 5 hours, right, while you're playing. And maybe for more hours while you prepare for the game. You know, while we're preparing and studying and getting ready, for some of us, it's all about making sure that we win that next game. It's so important that we win. But if you think about it, for the universe, it's just as fine if your opponent wins. You know, maybe sometimes it matters a tiny bit. Maybe sometimes you've got somebody who's really worked hard and they need or deserve a win more than somebody else. But for the most part, you know, we and our opponents deserve the wins about equally. And if your opponent wins, that's totally fine. So that's one of the first things that I recommend you sort of think on until you agree with and believe that. You know? Just realizing the opponents are people, therefore, you know, their need for a win is about the same and about as important and valuable as your need for a win. It doesn't actually matter almost to anyone if you win. Then another source of this issue comes from caring about your rating and basically like the honor and respect you're going to get from your rating. And there, what I would suggest reflecting on is the fact that almost nobody out there really cares that much what your rating is. There aren't many people who are out there like checking your rating online and making judgments about your value as a person based on your rating or your most recent games or things like that. You know, if your rating is 2205 or 2197, like, actually, even like a huge barrier like that, like making 2200, which can be a life goal for many people and a reasonable one, I think. But even something like that, you know, whether you're 1997, whether you're 2197 or 2205, you know, me and other random people, we probably have a similar sense of how strong you are one way or the other, and it doesn't really change our opinion of you in any important way. I've never seen this castles move here. Looks very risky to David. After fe6, it might end up being pretty similar to other lines. No, it comes with an immediate queen trade. Very bold move from white. Knight here. And white is up a pawn from the very beginning of the game. Some kind of an experiment that didn't work out. Black has clear comp. Not like clearly enough comp, clearly some comp, to be clear about what I'm saying. Gives up the pawn, makes progress. Oof. that's it. All right. By the way, folks, tournaments start in about 8 or 9 minutes. I'm looking at a game here out of interest, but be aware that we're really here for you all to play a tournament and me to watch and comment on that. And if you want to get in on that tournament, try to find your way through the links. If you've got any questions about how to join the tournaments, I hope that you can make it in. I'm happy to try and help you. See if I can't find our tournament here. Under 1300 group needs 2 more players. Mostly Feral Cat. The players in the under 1300 group don't need to have played any games before. The players in the 13 to 1700 group have to have 1 chess.com rapid game under their belts, and the players over 1700 need to have 5. Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't fully elaborate that last point, Richie, but on that last point about, nobody caring about your rating, like, think about it like this, like, how many people are doing that? How many people, think about some people you care about and who care about you, and then ask yourselves, do they even look up my rating? Do they care about my rating? Like, I would always used to think, like, my mom doesn't even know what my rating is. She doesn't care. Of all the, and she's somebody who cared about me more than anybody else, right? It's like, really, how many people do care, And if my rating goes up or down 10 points, is there anyone out there who's really going to be like, you know what? I really had the wrong idea about David. He's actually a really bad or really good player, Hey, Mostly Feral Cat, if you're 1900 on Lee Chess, you could probably play in the 13 to 1700 group here. So just play 1 game and then you'll be in. I know that story's not true immediately, Pineapple. For anyone on YouTube, Pineapple says, my wife will leave me if I fall below 2,000 on chess.com. That is the opposite of every wife I've ever heard of. Yeah, it is somewhat a measurement of your current level that's supposed to help you know if you have been improving or not. And in that sense, it's generally supposed to be a somewhat helpful guide, not something that you get too obsessed about, When I go swimming and I swim, let's say 100 meters, if it takes me 1 minute 18, then I know I went a little bit slower than maybe I could have. And if I do 1 minute 15, I know I went a little bit faster than maybe I would be able to. So that one might say I improved, or the other might say I disimproved. But it's also just one data point, and it's sort of like in a small, and it's decided by a rather small amount. Just like going up 10 chess rating points might just mean you lost 1 game, right? It's just like a tiny little piece of data. If you lose, if the data starts stacking up over a long time and your rating is going down like really consistently, that's probably a useful indicator that indeed you are getting worse, which is a whole separate thing, Richie. But at some point in your life, I don't know if it started now or if it's 20 years in the future for you, or 5 years in the future, or 40 years, but at some point in everybody's life, you will start to get worse at chess, unless you're unlucky enough to sort of die in an accident before you can start going down. So that is another thing that you will have to deal with at some point in your life, getting worse at chess and still enjoying it and playing it. It's going to happen for almost everybody. It's happened for me. And it's honestly, I could look at it and be like, well, I'm glad that I got to live a long enough life that I got to start going down in my chess rating a little bit. So, yeah, that's another thing you'll have to deal with at some point. But trust me, like, it feels good when you get over the fact that your rating has gone down a little bit and you can still enjoy it, right? If my swimming times start getting a little bit slower when I'm actually going to the swimming pool trying to get better, at first that might feel like, oh, shoot, that's a bad thing. But I also know, like, you know, ideally I will live long enough that my swim times will be going down, right? So, so you just have to take it all in stride and keep enjoying the activities you enjoy. Yeah. Lots of people in that boat, Warrior Boys. But, you know, you're doing good already just by playing games against players who are lower rated than you, which is like, you know, you're generally risking your rating, Warrior Boys, when you're playing these tournaments because you're one of the highest quite often. So just the fact that you're consistently taking that risk is a very good sign for your health on that question. All right, let's go back to our arena. I don't have time to look at the games from Uzbek Chess anymore like I would like to. Looks like we've got enough people for the under 1300 group to start in 2 minutes. So that is good news for all of them. I'm going to try and fix my view here a tiny bit. It's as many rounds as you want it to be, Toro Deboro. Folks, this tournament is arranged as an arena, which means that you play any number of games that you want to during a 3-hour period. After every game finishes, instead of another game starting, it just waits for you to click that you want to start another game. Welcome to the dojo. Mostly feral cat. Yeah, so basically you play the next game when you want to, when you click a button saying that you're ready for the next game. You can go away. You could play like 2 games, go away, eat a meal, have a swim, come back, and play 2 more games at the end, you know? By the way, everybody over on YouTube, Filet Gefilte Fish from Twitch says hi to you all. So I hope people are well on either platform. We've got 2 more minutes to try and make sure that these events hold. Let me check if we've got the players we need for the 13 to 1700 group. Yeah, we've got just enough players there as well. 4 players. And let's check our 1700 plusers. $1,700 we also have 5 players. Okay. So looks like we are going to have all 3 sections, 3 tournaments. Games start in 40 seconds or so. So some last well wishes and pieces of advice from me. In general, I always recommend when you're playing chess to monotask. So definitely close or mute the stream so you don't hear commentary during your game. The commentary will be automatically saved online. You can go back and watch it later to see if I've seen one of your games. And monotasking in general is good. Getting that focus on, playing the game seriously and enjoying it to the most and max. And as we've been talking about this morning, don't worry if your rating goes up or down. Just enjoy playing. We've got some really tough opponents here in the dojo, so hopefully they will give you some pretty tough struggles to enjoy. So let's get into our first games. We're going to start the way I normally start by going down to the under 1300 group and opening up the games there And then we'll move steadily up, rotating through the different sections. So we'll comment under 1,300 games at an under 1,300 level. Then we'll comment 13 to 1,700 games at a 13 to 1,700 level. Then we'll comment over 1,700 games at an over 1,700 level. And hopefully for everybody who's watching the tournament and the show, at some point we'll be looking at a game that is really at the right level for you, and with commentary that's useful for you. Alrighty, so we get a Gioco Piano, aka quiet game. Gioco, Italian for game. Piano, Italian for quiet. This is apparently the pianissimo variation, which means the super quiet variation. And that's because there's no immediate fighting. Each player establishes a pawn structure claiming, a half of the center, so to speak. And then some maneuvering often ensues. Oh gosh, I hope they show up, Valkyrie. Was there a center fork trick available in the move order played in this game? Bishop c4, knight f6 attacking the pawn, white played d3. Center fork trick would have come up had white played knight c3, but once you've got the pawn chain defending e4, there's no center fork trick. Knight, okay, and here after bishop c5, white could consider doing this, but as folks in chat are being very helpful, there's a bishop on c4, and the center fork trick doesn't work when you have your own bishop on c4 because you attack both their pieces, but one of them runs away by capturing a second piece of yours, and now you're never going to catch back up as white. No matter how much black doesn't have a pawn center, no matter how much their pieces are hanging and dangling, you'll never eat two pieces for free here. So h3, h6, rook e1, black castles. c3 could be a prelude to central action or slower queenside space grab. Not that the queenside space grab happens slowly, but the game doesn't explode as much by b4. And we see Ola Chessbomb very comfortable with the opening, playing these moves very quickly. Slippery slope, giving it some thought. Hiding the bishop, giving the bishop a place to tuck away. Yes, in this position, black chose to castle versus going sicko mode with g5. I don't recommend g5, but the fact that white's played h3 means there's some chance you could do this thing. I think if you want to avoid h6, g5 as white, don't play h3. Play the c3 move first, right? And you can play some move order like this. And knight d2. Just play your useful moves. g5 will be pretty bad if you haven't yet played h3. I think. I do believe once white's played h3 that there are many positions where g5 is actually playable. I think that's often all it takes. But black castled, and so we get this position here. White grabs some space like normal. Bishop e6. White would normally play, I think, just knight d2 here in Super GM games. But we're watching the under 1300 section, folks. Why does it look exactly the same as the Uzbek Chess Cup so far? This looks like Sindarov, like Nepomniachtchi versus Sindarov or something, right? What is going on? Why are players so good? All right, queen takes over for the bishop, puts an eye on the weak pawn, but most of all, the queen, it's very nice for her to come onto light squares right after the light squared bishops trade. And so black, could ask themselves, do I want queen d7 or queen e7? And generally, it's going to be queen d7 that's going to be better, getting onto light squares. Because there are no light squared bishops. That means your queen can't get attacked by your opponent's bishop, and also that there might be some weak squares. So she takes over the role of light square bishop. All right, what's a solid plan for white here? I mean, the most solid plan might be bishop e3, just trading more pieces. That's very solid. It also reduces potential pressure against f2. I think one of the major plans when you get this pawn structure change, Arsenal fan Richie, is to play d4. Here it looks a little bit hard to imagine exactly when and how white plays d4. I don't love your bishop a3 suggestion because d6 looks pretty solid. I don't see any immediate plan to make much use of the bishop on a3. Not even a medium-term plan to make use of the bishop on a3. So I would be afraid that's misplacing that bishop here, since I can't see any way to ensure that there's any pressure against this pawn structure. So to me, bishop e3 is going to be my answer. Let's see what white did. d4. Goodness gracious, straight for the gullet. Seemingly a pawn sack, unless David has miscounted the pieces. You're thinking again, bishop a3, b5 kick their knight, d4. They'd have to trade with ed4, and then you'd get e5. Yeah, possible. But I guess I would just vaguely say that seems pretty far off to me, right? Like when you go b5, you're going to have to respond to the knight a5 tempo. And when you play d4, yeah, maybe you'll play d4 at some point. I just, I still don't feel it coming. It seems too far away. I also think that the bishop here might encourage black to play the move b5 when you've definitely wasted the time. But I don't know. To me, this is the best square for that piece, because I think black's bishop's really excellent here. Okay, Oscar Chess suggests bishop a3, the knight maybe goes to f4 pretty quickly, and that could be a good square, and we almost rather our bishop were just here to trade. Also a thought. But d4, this is the wildest choice from Ola. Slippery Slope spending significant time working on this opening, but the most time spent dealing with d4 because this move was a surprise. It's very good in general to spend some of your time dealing with surprises. Right? When your opponent plays a move you didn't see coming and you think, are they just losing a pawn? What's going on? That's a really great moment in general to put some time and effort in. Personally, I don't see what's wrong with taking the pawn. So Slippery Slope does. He trades the knights. And now you got to have some confidence, Slippery, and start playing play these recaptures a little bit faster. There we go. Bishop takes. So, generally speaking, it looks like black's up a solid pawn here, right? Rook a2. Sorry, I don't know why that undid. Rook a2, defending f2, keeping more pieces on the board. It makes sense. I was vaguely expecting bishop b2. But rook a2 makes sense. And from black's perspective, I would say major moves would be rook e8 and king h8. Moves that take some of the pressure or annoyance off of the e6 pawn. Hey Alvin, how are you doing today? c5 from black. Okay, anchoring that bishop. But leaving the e6 pawn pretty weak. I think white can trade here, and I feel that there's a tiny bit of juice in the position. Tiny bit. Not enough for the pawn, but I wouldn't have played such a dynamic move as black. I guess it's just the playing rapid or blitz online, playing easy moves kind of instinct. but you do some simple cleaning of your position. More often than not, it works out in faster time controls, I guess. Hi, Sweet Bell Pepper. Okay, and now Ola is getting into it, thinking about where these two pieces could go, hopefully. Not easy to figure out, but it's got to be figured out. You know, if these pieces don't get off the back rank at some point, your position's not going to be that good. Honestly, the bishop's fine where it is, but the knight has really got to get into the game. And something like knight d2, you always have to watch out for bishop f2. Taking a couple pawns. I guess bishop f2 doesn't yet work, really. So it would be okay to play knight d2. I would probably play bc5, dc5 like white's doing. And then there's knight d2 or knight a3. Would be the main moves to look at for white. In my opinion, this piece just has to get going. Hi, Lumbra. Here's a little story from Sweet Bell Pepper. And they say, I played a classical game yesterday and it was a really crazy position. I pretty much played perfectly through most of the tactical complications, but had a lapse in concentration towards the very end and blundered badly. I knew I was going to make a certain move and then just totally forgot. Is this a common experience? It's common in the sense that most everyone has done that between 1 and 3 times in their lives. It's not common in the sense that you would be doing that consistently yourself. You know, so it's an experience that most of us, maybe all of us, have had, but it's not an experience that happens to us every day. I think in tournament games, it's happened to me maybe 2 or 3 times, I would say, over maybe 1,000 classical games that I've played in tournaments. I think once I just reached out and played the second move in my intended variation instead of the first move, or, well, let's say we'd already played a couple moves in a sequence. You know, maybe I had a 4 or 5 move sequence I planned, and at some point I played the next move instead of the current move. I think that's also something that most people have done, you know, once or twice or 3 times. And then a couple times I've planned to do something and then just done something else. Not even necessarily the next move in a variation or something. Yeah, a little break in concentration could make sense as what causes it. Sweet bell pepper, you're in the middle of a variation. You go to the bathroom, you come back, and you don't follow your variation. Or bishop e3, there we go. And now crazy controversial slippery slope goes for the next pawn, even though the rook is still watching. That looks like it should cost black a piece. That looks just too aggressive. Queen takes, defending the knight, attacking f2, check, and captures. Okay, queen takes looks safer to me. Yeah, Lumbra says it's happened to them as well. Richie's done it. So, yeah. It happens now and then, Sweet Bell Pepper. It's a very annoying and weird thing in the moment, right? Because you don't want to play a great game and just, it seems like you almost lose it when you deserve to win it or something, right? Or like, you know, chess-wise, you figured everything out and you deserve to win the game. There's that kind of a feeling around it. But if you think about it in the great scheme of things, it's kind of like a weird, funny experience that we all share. It's going to happen to almost everyone at least once at some point. So, you know, so be it. It happens. Hey, Nemtomi, I'm really sorry to hear that you're being devastated instead of loving and enjoying your time there. I'm really sorry to hear that. This should be something that you enjoy so much. And do you have one game left? What I would really recommend to you is that you find some way to enjoy your 9th game. No matter what kind of crushing happened, no matter how devastated you're feeling about some things, I would love to be at the Pula Open right now with you or in your place. If I'd lost 6 games, would I still say that? Hopefully. I can't say for sure. I'm not always completely even-keeled about the losing, which I guess means that no matter how even-keeled you are about it, you could still stand to refresh your memory on the reasons why it's okay to lose now and then. Hey, Pizza Racer. And Nate, I'm sorry, I see you, and I will answer your question as well, of course. So now White's up a piece, though, as I said, we won't really feel it till this knight gets off the back rank at some point. Yeah, the advantage swung from black to white when black grabbed that second pawn, Radiograph, and you're exactly right. That pawn grab was really a piece hang, so to speak, but a complicated one, but tactically, this knight takes e4 move does by force lose the knight. Now, should Slippery Slope be able to calculate that for sure? No, it's complicated. Should Slippery Slope understand the rook's on e1 and be worried that this move might not work? Yes. Should be aware that it's a risky move, so it's the kind of move where you try to calculate. If you get it wrong sometimes, you get it wrong sometimes. Maybe next time you'll calculate it correctly, right? At least what I would hope is that Slippery Slope just has the sense like, ooh, knight takes e4. That's a little risky. There is the rook there. Let me try to calculate it. And maybe they don't calculate it correctly. Maybe they do. Who knows? But at least if we recognize the moments where we're doing a move that deserves to be calculated and try to calculate, that's the first step, and then over time our calculation can get better. But knowing when to calculate comes even before that. So bishop d4, to defend the knight, black has to take with the queen. And it's possible that Slippery Slope calculated this far, but the queen was also defending the e6 pawn, and check happens to win the knight. So now black is trying to defend. White brings the knight out, which is bad news for black, and black now forces the rooks for queen trade. So this poses a real challenge for white at a practical level. Yes, 2 rooks and a knight are worth a lot more than a queen, but a lot of low-rated players don't really believe that they can coordinate their pieces. Sometimes with reason, sometimes they can. So it's going to be a big technical challenge for Ola to pull this off with these 3 pieces against the queen. But it is winning. It is winning, and Ola does have time on the clock to do that work. So hopefully they will. Nemtomi adds, my opponent today was a total about it. So one of the things that can really make losing in a chess tournament worse is if your opponent does something that makes you sort of hate them or pseudo-hate them. I say pseudo-hate because really somebody who's like a jerk to you on the chessboard, I mean, at the end of the day, that person's not like Adolf Hitler or Donald Trump, right? Like, they're like a jerk, but does it really rise to deserving hatred, right? Are they dropping bombs on people somewhere, right? Are they Joseph Stalin or Netanyahu or someone like that, they're kind of a jerk. It sucks a lot for Nemtomi and for any of us who are losing a game. It does suck when you lose a game and your opponent is nasty about it. Yeah. It definitely increases the pain of it all, right? There's people who ask you like a rude question at the end, like, gosh, I really don't understand why you took that pawn. It looked like a dumb idea. And you're like, yeah, it turns out it was a dumb idea. I know, I'm already sitting here hating myself or whatever. That kind of stuff, right? So it definitely adds a lot of pain for Nemtomi or those of us who've been in Nemtomi's situation. All right, some nice maneuvers from Olachess. This knight on c4 is very nicely placed to defend our loose pawn on the queen side, stop black from playing this, and then we can maneuver with the rooks. Man, that's like a pretty darn good start from Olachess for this tricky position. So that's making it really hard for Nemtomi to take the losses in stride for sure and try and still enjoy the ninth game. But Nemtomi, are you okay with my suggestion that you try to enjoy Game 9 anyway, despite everything that's going against you so far at this tournament? Make the most of being at that tournament. Maybe your last round opponent will be someone you could like commiserate with about how many games you've lost. Maybe you could have a nice post-mortem with them. Maybe you could make a friend. Maybe you can make one more friend before the tournament's over. It's very important, folks, when you're at a tournament to have a goal that you can always focus on, a goal that can pull you out of any of the dark moments that can come for some people at chess tournaments when we don't like win and achieve as much as we want to win or achieve, right? So can you still make a friend before the tournament's over? Or can you play, an opening you've been wanting to play and haven't yet played in round 9, right? Can you come up with something that makes this last day and this last game in the tournament worth something to you? Yeah. And I'm really sorry too, Nemtomi. I know, I know what the cost is and the buildup is when when you're registering and training for a tournament in another country. You're traveling. You're spending money on the hotel. It's your free time. Our free time is so precious to us, for many of us, right? We spend so much of our time working. Queen g5 attacks the rook. The rooks get connected. Great work so far from Ola Chessbomb. Incredible work so far. So yeah, you put a lot into it. It's really valuable. But I would say you still want to just try and get the best out of this last day that you can. So try and think of something. And that's why it's really good to have goals that you can work on no matter what your score is, no matter how you're doing in the tournament, something that you can focus on to feel positive. I hear you, Nemtomi. Yeah. Now let's give a moment to Nate. Sorry, Nate. But you understand, Nate. Nemtomi put so much into this. We knew about this for a while. This tournament was coming up, so that's something I really care about. Congrats to Ola Chessbomb on managing to win this tournament, even with a beautiful move at the end. Look at this b7, sacking the rook, getting the new queen, and Slippery Slope concedes that that's going to be game. So well done, Ola Chessbomb. Congratulations on that one. So Nate says, in positions where there isn't any obvious plans, an opponent is thinking for a long time, I tend to just daydream and just wait to react to their moves. I think it's a bad habit, but I'm not sure how to break it. In fact, it's maybe not such a bad habit, Nate. I used to think it was a bad habit when I was young, and all I knew how to do was calculate, and I would work really hard calculating, and I believed in outworking my opponents, and putting in more effort over the board than them, and all that, right? So I used to think that too, and like I would never get up for a walk. I would never daydream. I would just always be like, just calculate something, calculate something. But to some extent, you're kind of exhausting yourself by banging yourself against a wall, right? If it is a position where there aren't obvious moves, ideas, calculations, plans, then it might not be helpful to tire yourself. It can actually be better to take a short break and then get back to it when your opponent moves. So that's the first thing I want to say is like how bad a habit it is. I'm not sure. Maybe it's okay. Maybe it's okay to daydream and take a break. We all have our own energy levels and ways of being, and maybe some daydreaming here and there could be good for you, right? Now, if you want to think more on your opponent's time, maybe what you can do is a less effortful kind of thinking, but still a little bit of thinking. You can think about some things. If you want to daydream, you could daydream about some of your pieces, right? So let's say I took this position here. In this position here, if you're black and maybe you don't know what your opponent's going to do, let's say black played c5 or played like king h8, and you don't have an obvious plan, you don't know what to do, you don't know where their pieces are going to be, something like that, right? Oh my god, and then it steals my position. That makes it hard for me to make my point. Let's see if I can get back to my game. All right, here we go. Yay. Okay, so you're in some position like this, right, Nate? And you don't really know what your opponent's going to do next, and you don't really have a clear plan for yourself, maybe. What could you think about that might be of some mild use for you, right? I think one thing you could just think about is like, which pieces are my best pieces? Which pieces are my opponent's best pieces? What would be the best square for that knight on b1? You could just dream about something like that, right? Like, well, I would dream about that once I figured out the knight was maybe a bad piece for my opponent. You know what I mean? So you'd be like, oh, which piece is badly placed? Well, the knight on b1 needs to get into the game. Well, where should it be? And it's not just should it go knight a3, knight c3, or knight d2, right? But what's a good square for this knight? g6? f3? c4? These are some thoughts that come up. f4 maybe? Pressuring e6 and g6? Right? So you just kind of like wonder some things like that. That might be enough to do on your opponent's time. And it can be somewhat relaxing or lower effort than calculating a bunch of variations. And often calculating variations on your opponent's time is not the most useful because you can't predict what they're going to do. So I was often just wasting my time calculating tons of variations when I didn't yet know if my opponent was going to play knight d2 or knight a3 or knight c3 or bishop e3 or bishop b2 or rook e2 or rook c2. So I think that may be like a starting place for you. A lot of people that I know of at higher levels, they think about more general stuff on their opponent's time, and then they do more specific work on their time. And Michael's suggestion makes a lot of sense as well. Michael's suggesting which pieces would be worth trading. So basically, you compare these bishops and say which one is better. Do I want to trade or not? Right? Then you compare this rook and this rook. Would I want to trade or not if it came up? These knights, would I want to trade or not? And maybe just having that sense of which pieces are better or worse in that way could be just some useful background information for when you have to think about your next move. Okay. Am I deprived? Maybe a little bit sleep deprived. I had a short night last night. I got up really early to do this stream. I'm in Hawaii now, so these tournaments are 3 hours earlier than they used to be for me. So Nate, are you saying that also as white, you might have a hard time thinking even if it were your move and you were trying to figure out where to put these pieces if there's no... Are you saying that basically you struggle on both sides of positions that don't have clear plans? Like the side that's to move and the side that's waiting for a move? Trolling a streamer is an exception. That's a good place to hate. Otherwise... Hating things is a waste of time, says Pizza Racer. I agree, Pizza Racer. I don't think hating is a very useful way to spend one's time. I think naturally now and then things pop up and then you hate them and then you deal with the hate. Bonjour, Elise. It's been a while. Hope you've been well. Yes. Okay, so Nate, you have a general problem with positions that don't have obvious plans more than you have a problem just with thinking on your opponent's time. In that case, check out the What to Do video on the YouTube channel. And there's a video that I made called What to Do in Chess. And it gives you a way of thinking about those positions and coming up with some kinds of ideas. And then after that, sorry, let's add Chess Dojo to the search. After that, there's a video that shows the idea in practice in an actual game. And then 2 videos of exercises. Okay, there you go. That's a link. It's on YouTube. Hey, Volstarcraft. We would love to comment on one of your games. You'll have to mute the stream so you can't hear me, and then go back and check it out later. Okay? Does that work for you? I'll try and open up your game here. I don't see anyone rated 447. There you go. I see you. Dan, right? Dan, not currently in the game. Okay, when you get your next game, be sure to mute and close the stream, and I'll try to watch one of your games, okay? Dan, short for Daniel. Makes sense. Profile picture in a public restroom. Hey, at least they recently cleaned that restroom. It looks very nice and clean. And somehow you've already won a game. Congratulations on that. It's going to be hard to work on all aspects of your game in 2 months, Nate. You might want to just pick 1 or 2 things to work on and then enjoy the tournament. I know it's a really big deal, but don't make it an extra big deal to yourself, if you know what I mean. Hey, Tori Doboro. Yes, I will try to comment on one of your games too. Would love to. Let's see if our friend Dan gets a game. So far not. I'll just click on watch them or something. Can I click on watching them? Message, block, or report? Nope, not what I want. I just want to follow. There we go. Watch. Wow, chess.com spinning out. That didn't work. Okay. Well, let's go give somebody in the 13 to 1700 group a watch. So normally we rotate around, try and spread the commentary. So let's find a game here. This looks like a good game to follow. Mostly feral cat against random chess guy. This is a Sicilian defense, an E6 Sicilian. I don't know if we have to call it a Khan or a Taimanov or whatever. I never know. So we're just going to call it an E6 Sicilian for me. You got a buddy. You got to keep up with your buddy. Fair enough. Is your buddy in the dojo? You can probably surpass your buddy unless they're in the dojo. All right, white starts to go for it here with f4. And that is the dream of somebody setting up these two bishops here. They do want to go for it at some point. Oh, you know, this d6 move means there isn't bishop c5, so it's a little bit easier to weaken this diagonal and go for it. Yeah, so that move's probably a good move from the feral cat. Thanks, Michael, for dispensing some of the advice for me. Fellow Dojoers are a great resource, and that lets me comment on one of the games here. Maybe this was a Khan. Yeah. I'm just tired of trying to guess which was a Taimanov and which was a Khan and which was an E6 Sicilian that's neither a Taimanov or a Khan. You know, I feel like I'm just going to call them E6 Sicilians from now on and just give up on that whole thing. What's the best way to build up confidence before a tournament? Ask ZJ Termination. What I do is I look at my best games from the past. I play over a greatest hits list. That's my own trick. That allows me to visualize myself playing well and winning games. Oh, or Paulson. Yeah, I give up. I 100% give up. Okay, feral cat brings the knight back to f3, avoiding trades, putting an extra white piece on the king side, so the force count on the king side improves in white's direction with this knight f3 move, and could be looking at e5 at some point. It does give black this knight g4 harassment move available for one moment that would force this bishop back to c1, I think. But then eventually white plays h3, knight f6, and bishop comes back out. I don't know if it's a big deal. I don't know for sure. Ooh, 2100 OTB in 4 years is very good. Yep. Yeah, because ZJ Termination, you're not the only one, right? As Far Eastern says, everyone can always go into tournament thinking about what they haven't done yet and the ways in which they're not ready. Because we can never be perfectly ready, right? To some extent, only the person who ends up winning the tournament was properly prepared. So it's easy to feel some lack or something missing in our preparation. So remind yourself of what you have done right or what you can do well. By looking at your best games or by focusing on the prep that you have done. You know, maybe there's something you've done well. Like, for example, if you spend 1 or 2 months doing calculation exercises and you feel like you're getting better after a couple months, you could just think about that, right? Think about the calculations you got right, a set of problems you did well on this week. Use that to tell yourself, like, okay, I'm going into this with like a really sharp sword, right? My calculation is really on. I've been honing it, you know, and it's ready to go when the moment comes. So that's another way to think, to be able to visualize something good from your side. All right, random chess guy goes for that queenside counterplay. What's more Sicilian than that? And now this knight is never secure in its spot. It always has to be ready to bounce away somewhere else, unless you play a3. a3 kind of lets you keep the knight on c3 longer if you really want it there, but it does give your opponent a hook to get some action going on the queen side at some point. So normally I prefer to just sort of pirouette my knight towards the king side and let them play b4 versus opening up the queen side, but there are some positions where this move is helpful. All right, so white advances, opening up the bishop. Main ideas here would be e5 or f5, or putting the queen on this side of the board. Personally, looking at this, I think queen g3 might have been my move if I had this position. Queen h4 also comes to mind, really preparing e5. And I'm sure e5 is a threat once the queen's on h4. But, you know, maybe knight e4 attacking your queen. Knight g5 would be an interesting move then. Knight takes, defends h7, so there's no mate. Then you plunge the knight into here. You know, this is even plausible for white. This is even plausible. You could potentially play queen h4, knight e4, knight g5. If it were classical, I would calculate queen h4. In rapid, I might just play queen here. It gets the queen onto that side of the board and prepares rook a e1 so I can work on e5 and f5. And if knight h5, I have queen h3. I don't have to calculate a super long line to see this is okay. I attack the knight. And then if it comes back, now I will have e5. If they play g6, maybe I'll play f5. Because the bishop's on my queen, right? And this can open things up and bring the bishop in here. Or maybe even g4 is a good move. I don't know. So I think queen g3 is a reasonable idea. We get f5 in the game. Black looks to set up a knight on e5 in response. After a deep think, a good move from Random Chess Guy. That move makes a lot of sense. What's white going to choose to do with this bishop? Pizza Racer, I haven't seen anyone over 2,700 playing the Dragon Sicilian recently, but I have seen players in the 25 to 2,600 range using it as a surprise weapon. I think to some extent the problem with the Dragon Sicilian is that even though it's not played much, it's still something that almost everybody prepped for at some point. Often if you play like a rarer opening, your opponents are not prepared for it, right? Like Arjun Erigaisi has been playing the Pirtz defense a little bit recently, right? And indeed, the first time he trotted it out against Gukesh, it was clear that Gukesh had not recently prepared anything for white against the Pirtz. But pretty much everybody who plays e4 has prepared for the dragon at some point. Even though it's rarely played now, it's sort of somehow iconic. Everybody's seen or heard Bobby Fischer's Yugoslav attack prep from like 60 years ago, which is still good enough, basically. So you won't really catch anyone unsuspecting with the dragon, in my opinion. So pretty rare to see top players play it. When we asked viewers to become Patreon members, did I mean any of the three categories? Yes, Nemtomi, any of the three categories. Anybody who wants to support our live streams or our YouTube videos or our podcast, Dojo Talks. Anyone who wants to support any of those three things, meaning you want us to keep doing those things, and you have a couple dollars extra in your life, a Patreon membership is a way to encourage us to keep doing the free content. And there are 3 levels, as Nemtomi says. I think the first level is $2 a month, and I don't know what the other 2 levels are. Maybe $5 and $10, something like that. Yeah, and Stamen says, they feel jealous that someone could remember prep they did more than a few days ago. So just the fact that you prepared for the dragon at some point, how would it stick with you? But I feel like, yeah, I don't remember much prep from the past either, Stamen. But the dragon line, I remember. It's just, I don't know. It's just in me. It's something that really sticks somehow. So I think people with black playing the dragon will rarely find a white player just flailing about. I don't think there's a huge upside on the dragon, actually. But, it should be playable, especially if you like to defend bad endgames. You could prepare some computer lines where you get bad endgames that are not necessarily lost, and you can just defend them if you enjoy. All right, Feral Cat gets the queen to g3. Seems like bishop d2 might have been a good choice. I was also thinking about bishop f4, sort of like we're fighting over the e5 square, but I wasn't sure about it. So just dropped back, brought the queen out, knight retreats, trade. Wait a minute, does white have f6 coming directly on the next move? Ay. That could be basically a piece-winning tactic, just threatening checkmate and the bishop. And there we go. We see the power of the queen on g3. I have to assume, Far Eastern, that there are some people out there who like defending bad endgames. I feel like there's every kind of chess personality. It's not immediately obvious that there would be people who want to spend their time in positions that are both bad and endgames, but I think it exists. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Accelerated Dragon is much more interesting to me from black's side. And I find that it's both a better opening for black objectively, and the white players are less well prepared. And there are a fair number of white players who won't be prepared for it. So I think Accelerated Dragon has much more upside for black. But it's always fluctuating with openings. To some extent, you should just play whatever catches your fancy, and then now and then explore something new, so you keep exploring and learning. Bishop f6 comes in. White grabs the piece. Technically, black has one pawn against the piece, but the position's very, very nice for white here. King h8, trying to get control of the dark square. White could play bishop g5, and black might never be able to capture this rook. Now, a fundamental feature of this position here, of course the rook retreats, but a fundamental feature of this position is opposite colored bishops. Opposite colored bishops favor middle game attacks. I also feel like the best use of an extra knight in chess is attacking in the middle game. So that goes with the opposite colored bishops. So I would be fairly inclined to play this super fancy move despite being ahead, because I feel like that's what the position wants from me. It wants me to put my rook here, keep the f6 square under control, and keep attacking the black king. So normally I play very safe when I'm ahead material in rapid or blitz, but bishop g5 makes sense to me here, actually. All right, the rooks get cranking on the f file. If white plays bishop g5, black's just going to play f6 defending their dark squares, which is a desirable move for black. Normally you don't like moving pawns in front of your king, but here sheltering your dark squares with the pawn is desirable. So white doesn't achieve anything with bishop g5 at the moment. Perhaps most logical would be to start twirling the knight towards the king side. Sorry, not all my arrows are showing up here. Maybe start bringing the knight over to that side of the board. Feral Cat, I like that they're stopping and thinking here, trying to come up with some kind of a plan. What would be a logical way to use the extra piece here? That's incredible that your opponent was at the board playing blitz chess using the opening that they were going to use in a tournament game 5 or 10 minutes later. Telegraphing the opening like that, that's pretty funny. You don't see that every day. A lot of times people are more precious and secretive about their openings. Knight e2, sending the knight towards the king. Strong approval. d5. This bishop objects to the pawn on e4. But what this means is white could play e5 and then go back into the f6 square with bishop g5 and so forth, right? So as white, I think I would accept that black wants to open up these bishops. And I think I would play e5 now. Bishop c3. Okay, interesting. Mate is threatened. We would expect f6. Maybe then white will play e5. f6, and white had a plan. I also love that when somebody thinks about a move and then has a plan for their next move. So bishop c3, white thought about. And after f6, they didn't think about this because they expected f6 and they had a plan for what they wanted to do in case of f6. So black will play f5 now. It's very important for white to put a piece on d4 here, because our bishop just got blocked big time. During the timing and tempo of it getting blocked, though, we have the chance to block black's piece as well with the knight or the bishop. Normally d4 is a famous dream square for the knight. But here after b4, bishop d2, I don't know. I feel like the bishop might be the right piece to put here. Queen on e3, knight on f4 maybe? Maybe that's the correct squares for the pieces this game. Or another plan I like with bishop d4 is you go a3, b4, bring the bishop to c5. And only then bring your knight to d4 once your bishop's amazing in this sort of c5, d6 range. Yeah. Maybe that's what I like here for white. Feral Cat thinking it through. Very nice. One thing I'll mention about how Feral Cat is playing this whole game is that after winning the knight, or winning the piece, right, they kept playing quote-unquote normal chess. They didn't start not using their time. They didn't start just playing for simple trades. They continued playing normal moves, like they still had a game to think about. This move here, slightly awkward and unusual, putting the rook on a square where the knight and queen might want to go through. It looks a little bit weird and a little risky. Rooks don't like being too close to the action, but there's a very specific idea here. White wants to play bishop b4, and white's also trying to control the d4 square compared to a3, d4, bishop b4. Now, allowing this diagonal to open would still be winning for white if they're winning the rook. But rook f4, it's interesting, trying to control both of those squares. If black plays g5, I feel like that's really the challenging move where we see, where we see the downside of rook f4. And Random Chess Guy takes the chance. Now, bishop b4, pawn takes rook. Bishop takes queen, pawn takes queen. White's going to lose their extra piece. So white's got to move the rook here. Let's see where it goes. It goes right back. Yeah, so rook f4 was like a nice idea, but not the right idea. Yeah, we've got a very, very friendly group of killers here, King Charles Cav. Inducing g5 seems like a win, no? I would say no, Grob Zombie. For black, I'd be happy to control some dark squares and some space with my pawn structure over here. b4, kicking the bishop. And now I would play f4. You know, taking dark squares with my pawns. I'm down a piece, but I'm fighting back against what my opponent has, you know? Hey, Volt StarCraft. No problem at all. It's very good to call it wherever you want to call it with these tournaments, right? We should play 1 game or 5 games or 2 games depending on what we feel like on a particular day. So that's totally correct. And I don't know if there is a way to leave, but as long as you don't start a new game, you shouldn't get repaired with anybody. It should be all fine. So, hope you enjoyed your games. Do I have to be on Twitch for this to work? The exclam commands, yes. They only work on Twitch. So, I'll send you a link to the Dojo Club on chess.com from which you can find the links to the tournaments. Twitch has these sort of like automated bots that respond to exclam commands with links and so forth. H6, covering some dark squares. So is it risky for black to advance pawns in front of their king? Yes, that is still risky. That is still how chess works. It is risky to advance the pawns in front of our king. However, think about it this way. Black's down a knight. What they have is an extra pawn on the king side. What we have is a battle of opposite colored bishops. So if black's able to put this pawn structure on dark squares, gain some space, try and shut down white's bishop and rooks, that's sort of the best you can do. Is it perfect? No. Can white eventually somehow win with the knight? Yes. But I have a lot of experience playing odds games, you know, playing games against kids or adult learners where I play with less pieces, and I would make these advances as black to try and cover my dark squares with pawns and hope that the white player doesn't have the skill to break through the structure. Now the skill for breaking through the structure is to eventually trade pawns and just rely on your extra piece to come out ahead once you make some pawn trades. So you want to move your queen to a square where she's out of the way of this, you know, maybe like try and get her to h5 or something. Then you want to try an h4 break, or if the pawn ever goes to f4, you try a g3 pawn break. That's what you're looking to do. And it requires some calculation to make it work. Here goes the queen. Looking at this pawn, Also, black's got to be careful about the g5 pawn because the h6 pawn's not defending it anymore. King h7. Now white could play a very fancy move, bishop g5, and it's probably good. But again, it's, you know, does your opponent find that kind of an idea? Knight f5. White was looking at sacrifices. 2 pawns for the knight and opening up the black king. But notice this bishop does not yet have an active diagonal, so it's not over yet. Let me just quickly show you the alternative feral cat. Since you were looking in the right direction, I'm going to show you this. I know it's a fancy move that one can't be expected to see normally, but bishop g5, deflecting the queen from the e6 pawn. This is a better move order for white. Then we get knight e6 with a tempo on the queen. She has to go somewhere like g6 or so, let's say. And then you can take the rook, so you're still up in exchange. And then take on f5. With that combination, so to speak, that fancy series of trades, we got 3 pawns and a rook for 2 minor pieces. So to some extent, white's even gaining a small amount of material like this. But you'll see the important thing is you've opened up the black king and you're sort of trading everything off. We still have enough material advantage that if rook takes, queen takes, this endgame's an easy win, right? Rook and 2 pawns against bishop. And the one other thing to calculate is what if they go bishop c8 like this? But that's, you know, that's 2,000 plus level to have looked that far ahead. I'm still over 2,000, so I did. We play rook takes rook, sacking the queen, and then rook check. The king has no way out because we've opened it up, and we forced that winning endgame. Let's see how the game went, because feral cat has also won this game. After king g7, they found this great move. Oh, rook f6 is a killer move here. Wow, so king g7 was not good enough. That move kills. Black can't take it because pawn takes pawn wins the queen. But it creates this threat of queen h6 that's just devastating. King moved backwards, check here, taking that. Oh, brutal. So the idea of breaking through with a sacrifice was definitely a good idea. So again, this might say to this question of, you know, was it good that white induced these moves? You know, look, they break through and they win. They break through and they win, but it requires some very complicated high-level moves from feral cat to do so. From random chess guy's position, you're down a piece. The best you can do is set up the pawn structure the strongest you can and hope that your opponent doesn't have the skill that mostly feral cat displayed in this particular game. So white displayed good skill and won the game, but I still stand by what I said. Hopefully that makes sense, that black had to be willing to play these moves f5 and g5. That was the best chance, was to build that pawn structure, and not everybody at this level would find these kind of sacrificial breakthroughs for white. Stamen, you were saying bishop takes b4, similar idea, right? Deflect the queen over to this side and then break through, right? But g5 is even better because that tempo on knight e6 is so huge. It ensures that we capture the rook and ensures that we capture the pawn, right? Yeah. Hey, Toro DeBoro. I'm now heading to the 1700 plus section for the next game to comment. So maybe that'll be a chance for us to talk more specifically about what there is between 2100 and 2300. Generally speaking, though, like a quick answer is it is generally some of everything. Looks like you've got a game going right now. Why don't you mute the stream and we'll look at this game. All right, Boro de Toro is playing black here in an endgame. I'm going to assume and believe that Toro has the chess class and etiquette to have silenced the stream, and I'm going to start my commentary now. So, Toro de Boro is down a pawn here in this endgame against Rowdy Rita. Now, when you're down a pawn in the endgame, about half the time you win, when you're down a pawn, about half the time you win. When you're down a pawn in an endgame, about half the time you draw, and about half the time you lose. So vaguely speaking, that's like the first thing we're feeling is like, okay, like we're probably somewhere right in that borderline between drawing and losing, right? And if the position is losing, then often it'll be one mistake from the opponent away from saving it and drawing it. And if it's currently drawing, then it might be one mistake from us away from switching to losing. So it's going to be generally in a very close situation where you're right on that borderline between drawing and losing. You want to play these endgames very carefully and well. Black perhaps planning a move like rook b4 to keep this pawn from queening. But they try and play something even more precise. Force the king to the first rank, then go behind the pawn. So that tells us right away that Borro de Toro has a certain degree of precision to their play in the endgame, which is good. Also good, Alvin Cruz winning against a 2,000-plus player. Congratulations, Alvin, and my condolences to the 2,000-plus player out there. I know, for every exciting story for one of us getting a big win, one of us had the sad story of getting a big loss or whatever. So two sides to every one of these stories. All right, rook gets behind the pawn. This pawn trade black should embrace in general. And that's something to be to be kind of calibrated to from the beginning of one of these endgames as black. Do we need counterplay with the A pawn to save the game? Or should we be content to trade the pawns if we can? In general, trading the pawns is the best you can do in most cases. The problem here for black is that this extra pawn is an amazing extra pawn. So this position is probably a winning position for white. Knight d4 was not available if black had played rook b4. So we're on the trail to precision here at this level. Potentially black should have played something like rook b4 with the idea that against rook a5, now you check him back and take. Or maybe even you just take, because the white king's not threatening to get to e3 yet. If the king goes to g2, you can still chase it back, right? The king's not yet threatening to get out of this second rank thing. So actually, look at this. Rook b4, rook a5, check. Here might be an imprecision because I still have to take the pawn, releasing the second rank, and the king just improves compared to where it was on h2. Really weird, right? Also, as far as being precise, white should play knight d4 first, check, and then king f2, because yes, king f2, there's check, here, check, and you still have to keep the knight defended on the third rank. So, strangely, this is a search for greater precision, but it allows knight d4, and eventually, if you are so lucky as to even take the pawn on b6, it'll allow your opponent to improve the king compared to when it was on h2. So rook a2, after all that, we find was a bad move. And it was correct to simply go to b4 first, going after the pawn. All right. Now, none of that might matter as white tries to immediately queen the pawn and not even trade the pawns. Well, as far as not mattering, I mean, this definitely would be an argument in favor of rook b4 not allowing the knight over into the game. Hi, Chess Gone Mad. How are you doing? White has won by resignation. So we were in this position here a moment ago. The black knight can't move to d5, c6, or c8 because the rook's controlling it. So black tries moving the a pawn, and white gets a new queen. Yep. That is that. Very nicely converted by Rowdy Rita. And there is an important lesson here for Toro de Borro in this one, right? This attempted precision with rook a2 was sort of like a surface level precision. It's like, it's attractive. It looks like we're being clever, right? Like a 1200 would play rook b4, not rook a2, because they wouldn't try to be so clever. They wouldn't see the cleverness. But in fact, it's an anti-cleverness, because our rook still has a responsibility to eventually take this pawn, which means we're not really cutting off their king on the second rank. What we want to do is go after their pawn and know that at some point, once we've taken it, we have this idea of coming down to the second or third ranks and cutting the white king off will be an important defensive resource for us in the future. But first, we got to take care of the b pawn, and we also have to really watch out for this knight d4 move. So we found this move that some people may have been like, wow, David's really talking a long time about this one little detail. It's just an in-between move. But I think we could label this as kind of the losing move, even though I think this endgame is losing no matter what for black. I would say that if we do this, this, I do think the odds are that white's winning, but they have to play another 20 good moves, right? So to me, I still consider this to be kind of a losing move. It more or less lets the b pawn queen after knight b5. So to further your question, Toro DeBoro, what is the difference between 2100 OTB and 2300 OTB? In general, it'll be some of everything. A 2300 will resist better in bad positions. They will essentially never give up. Never say never, but they'll almost never give up. Which means they'll continue to provide resistance even when you think that it's already time to lose. They'll find surprising defensive moves that you didn't even expect that they were still trying to defend when you're expecting resignation even. They'll know some more endgames. They'll have been playing a bit longer. They'll have gotten around to studying some endgames. They'll have a greater knowledge of middle game ideas, and they'll calculate further and more rigorously. They'll look for their opponent's resources when they're calculating, so they won't just look for their ideas. And I mean, 2100s have already started looking for their opponent's resources, but 2300 it's a higher level of rigor where when they're calculating a variation, they're trying to refute the variation that they're calculating with like really serious effort. They're really trying to see like what are all my resources and my opponent's resources, really investigating objectively and with precision a variation that they calculate. Since that was just a tidbit of a game, let's try and find a more complete game to watch here in the 1700 plus group. I would have loved to see an Oscar chess game, but it's another end game. Let's see if we can find like a full game. How's this one? Sure, this will do. I don't know what's going on here. Inferno and King Charles Cav. Symmetrical pawn structure. Bishop pair for black. Yeah, you're welcome. White's prospects are going to have to maybe be on the dark squares because black's position's pretty safe and solid. And I have a potential idea for black to put a pawn on e5, blocking this bishop and taking more space. I don't know if I'd want to go to e4 and block my own bishop, but I might try taking a tiny bit more space here. Is this pawn hanging? Bishop c2, rook d2, retreat the bishop, knight b7. And I think the knight gets away scot-free. So black needs to defend the b7 pawn here probably. Can I make the board bigger? Only by removing the players' names. This is how I normally do it. I think this view is moderately maximized. I don't think I could make it much better. So, knight b7, kind of annoying. Should we move the bishop on c7 to b6 or d6? Interesting. Just so bothered by the knight. Sends it home. But, I mean, now we're just going to have to defend c6 next move. What did King Charles Cav find that I don't yet see? After the knight goes somewhere... Oh, well, that blocks the attack on c6 a little bit. There is knight takes queen here, though. And this move is consistent with this plan. I think Inferno's doing okay with this series of moves. Knight c5 to e4 looked good. I mean, is now looking good. Seems to be good. I would guess black needs to trade one knight. Gotcha, Ziz. I agree. I would like the chessboard to be even bigger if I could. Like, if I could just have their names appear, like, to the side of the board, and the board be a little bit bigger, and just the names and the clocks on the side, I would love that, but it would take a lot of work to jimmy all that, so... That's the sound of a baby falling. Oof. Alright, so we got one trade from King Charles Cav. Now, at least maybe white's not threatening knight f6 check, queen takes c6, so maybe we don't have to worry about that pawn for a moment. Black puts the rook to defend the pawn anyway, rather than putting rooks on the d file. Huh. I was thinking black might go rook d8 here. Oh, that's great, Tim. Rook c8. Alright, so what does white have? I guess the d file. Maybe we should make use of the d file. Let's just see what our maximum d file would be. It's almost genius, right? Almost genius, but after e5, after e5, it's not genius, I guess we could say. What's the opposite of genius? It's an abject failure, I suppose. Like my internet or stream, which I think just failed for a second there. Hopefully it's back and working all right. So maybe just this would be a different way of using the d file. Oh, we've got a move from Inferno. Let's see what it was. Rook d7 was played. Oh my lord. Oh my lord. Electrifying. How does who do what, bruh? Move the rook on the file. It can move as far as it wants to, even if it's shocking. Oh my god, King Charles Cav believed. Believed. It's the mutual blindness, folks. The mutual blindness. You believe your opponent. By default, you do believe, most people do believe their opponents. And then they have to pick the spots where they want to not believe the opponent and double check them. So white gets the 7th rank here with the rook. Should not have been able to get it. The position was not strong enough. Position was not strong enough to take the 7th rank, but black believes. Steps away, pokes the knight. If white really believes in knight f6, they can still go for it here. But it still doesn't work. The idea is you chase this queen away afterwards with g3, right? And she goes to h3 or e4 or something. And then you take here. And it's the same defensive move black has to see. But honestly, it's much closer to working now. With the rook on the 7th rank, right? Because actually this looks like it would work. After rook c7, there's also this move. You could calculate bishop e4, going for your own checkmate, but white probably wins with this, right? So oddly enough, knight f6 might work now that the rook's here, and we've got this rook c7 resource. Let me check that again, shall we? Check here. Let's put the queen here instead. Here. 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 That works. How'd that endgame go, Oscar and Pineapple? Queen g5, h4, queen f5. All right, managed to refute it. I really didn't think knight f6 should work. I really didn't think that knight f6 should work. So I was expecting to find a defense for black, and there it is. But if Inferno's feeling it, you know, they're probably calculating knight f6. If they played rook d7, I believe, you know, they could be calculating knight f6. King h8 is also playable here because there's no queen on d7. That's true. But once you let that knight live on f6, I'm not sure how playable king h8 is, right? Because now white's just in your squares, and when are you ever gonna get white out of your dark squares now? You know? It gets harder and harder the longer you tolerate it. So it may be plausible, but direct refutation is advisable. Highly recommended is direct refutation. Calculating a ton, taking your opponent's sacrifice, and then just bam, straight up refuting them, confronting them with the reality of their miscalculation. Nope, that's just my analysis. No move yet from Inferno. Having a long think on this move, so they're really trying to make this thing work, but it won't. And if they can't do it, then what do they do about this knight? No easy choices either. So whenever you give up on knight f6, then it's hard to find what you do want to do. King Charles Cav was hungering for that pawn. Queen c6, bishop h2. Relevant little tactic in the position. But how did that game go, Oscar? Rook c1. Bishop g6. And now you might want to sort of twirl the knight, but bishop h5 against knight e2. You want to move the knight to pressure c6 and c7 here for white. That seems pretty clear. Maybe the move knight b5 is not terrible. You won the endgame, but it might have been a mouse slip involved. Well, playing an endgame is fun one way or another. The rook retreats from the 7th rank. It was pretty good there. Knight e2, bishop h5. I really want to play knight e2. Bishop h5. Can I play g4? Bishop g6, rook c6. I suppose I could. So it looks like King Charles Cav probably gets to walk away with this extra pawn. Keep things together. At some point, you're going to want to come to the open file or advance the extra pawn so it's not too weak. It's kind of like next steps Black would like to do. White wants to whip something up, might be looking at h4, h5. The rook's covering that square. It's the first time we could safely advance this pawn. h4, h5, bishop moves h6 would definitely weaken the Black king on the dark square significantly. If you play h4, I guess you would expect Black to play h5 to prevent any progress there, and that doesn't seem fun for White. White brings the knight back to e4. Black counters the long diagonal. Yeah, I saw that move coming from Black. It gives up the bishop pair, honestly, to trade on b2, but Black's got a clean extra pawn, so I think it makes sense to go for this trade. I'm imagining, you know, rook d2, bishop takes b2, by the way. To me, that's just the logical direction for the game to go. Then rook to the d file. To go rook c2 could be a little annoying. Our extra pawn is not healthy yet. I'm not the best at this stuff, like knowing what the technique is. If we go c5 immediately here, trade, doubles, and the pawn looks dead again. Any chance we got queen h4 again here? Okay, goes to the d file like I was thinking I would. And rook c2 immediately like I was worried about. Howdy, Rita. We saw one nice sequence from you today. Cleaning up a rook and knight endgame. So imagine you're in good form and good spirits today. Oh man, a chance to say howdy rowdy. Howdy miss it. Now King Charles Cav settling in for a serious thing, because all that we have here is this extra pawn. It's all that we have. After a minute, King Charles Cav thinks they can push it. If White takes twice, there's bishop e4, huh? Queen e4, rook c5, rook c8, bishop f3. Okay, this pawn move looks sound. White trades. Nice find by King Charles Cav. And once the pawn's on c5, you know, maybe rook d5 could come as well at some point. Maybe this pawn can be maintained. And the knight is dangly. Against knight c5, bishop c2. Against rook c5, bishop e4. Black's got it all covered. They've got their extra pawn. Good work, King Charles. Good work. Showing us delicately how it's done. When you have an extra pawn, but it is not a powerful extra pawn. It's a very delicate thing to extract an advantage out of the game. Chess Gone Mad saying if queen b7, there will always be this nice little tactic. Knight f6 check, winning the queen. Indeed. Whew. What could White do to actually threaten that pawn? Maybe move the queen so bishop e4 is not a capture? Queen f4 or something? Okay, rook c4, just supporting the knight. Oh, that gets off of the diagonal. So White wants to play knight c5 next move. Let's check if rook d5 defends the pawn or not. I have a feeling it's going to be not, right? So let's just double check it. Black played rook d5 defending the pawn, and white traded it. Oh, queen f8. It does work. I was right to check it. Bishop takes e4, however, was the choice. Taking out that knight. Yeah, I guess that bishop on g6 wasn't going anywhere better than trading that knight. So now we just simplify the extra pawn. We're gonna want to get rid of the back rank mate soon. Maybe rook d5, leaving this rook undefended, but the pin is not really so useful since there's no pieces that can go to b4 or d4. So after queen e4, I think maybe as black a good setup is rook d5 and then queen d6. Then all your pieces are defending this pawn. Then you take time to get rid of your back rank mate with one of these pawn moves. And then you can just get to work with that extra pawn. So King Charles Cav has done it. They've got a clean extra pawn set up here. Good point, ChessCon Mad. Let's review this calculation. Rook d5, knight c5. Rook c5, rook c5, rook c5. In this position, queen a8 check is winning. Because the back rank can only be guarded by queen f8, and then the rook on c5 can't be recaptured. Alright, so rook d5 doesn't work. Knight c5, and white regains the pawn. So this move was forced as well as being pretty logical, I think. Is that sort of classical time control weekend tournament, Rowdy Rita? I believe you're in the UK, not to reveal too much personal information about you. So in the UK, what does a under 2400 FIDE weekend event look or sound like? Like how many games would you be playing over how many days? What's a time control like? G6. Simple move. Gets rid of the back rank immediately. Queen c2 comes in. But yeah, now you know when you play rook d5, e4, you got to be ready for... Where does your rook go? G6 feels like it was the wrong order. Now, was I right that rook d5 would have been okay? Like, let's say I go rook d5, queen here, and the opponent plays e4, right? Does this move order do anything better for me than g6? Well, maybe I've got rook d2, right? That would be the first thought. That's why we're improving our pieces first. Now, rook c5, trying to take advantage of my back rank. I take the queen, takes with check, takes, and I've lost my extra pawn. Holy back rank tactic, Batman. Rook c5 anyway. Alright, so now I'll try here. Here. Trying to be a genius, right? Boom! What? Oh no! So the back rank is proving to be as important as the queen to the open file tempo. And this rook just is going to run out of squares on the, the fifth rank, I think. Can it live over here? If g4, take this pawn. Maybe, but okay, it's definitely not a simple story. In the game after g6, black tries rook d5 as well. So the big question is going to be e4, trying to dislodge the piece. White can also just sit here and try to hope to hold against this pawn, but the big question is e4. All right, 80 plus 10. London room rental prices are high. Usually it would be 90 plus 30, so it's a faster time control. because it's in London. They're trying to get the tournament done faster. Typically, you're playing 5 games over 2 days. So you're going to play 3 classical games on one day and 2 on the other, huh? That is brutal. That is straight up like an American tournament. Hi. Now, of course, if you get to play a game with the GM, that's going to be beautiful and fun. And a tournament like that takes place at a bar, huh? But I thought bars in England were called pubs. You usually take a bye so that you play 2 games a day. Yeah, phew, me too. I would as well if I were ever playing in a UK tournament. Oh, it's a district, not a pub. Okay. Potter's Bar Tata. Seems like Tata might want to come join you at that tournament. Okay, now Black's got the ideal setup with the queen on d6. And now if White goes after this rook, it'll always be able to tempo the queen. And you probably won't lose your extra pawn ever. Chess Gone Mad over on YouTube says that he doesn't play those tournaments because he gets tired. And Chess Gone Mad is a young one, so it's not just me. It's not just me being old. It is actually tiring to anyone at any age. Well, actually, like 8-year-old kids don't get tired, but you know, fortunately, they're not 2200 level yet. But even somebody in the prime of their life could get tired playing 5 classical games in 2 days. G3. Sheltering the king. So now Black's got to come up with progress, right? I think H5 with the idea of H4 might make sense. Might do. That sounds very British. Might do. Rowdy and Tata, have you ever met each other? Do you know each other in person? E5. Expanding in the center. That surprises me. But I have indifferent technique. Alright, E4. Poking the rook. The rook cannot keep that pawn defended, so he's going to have to do some adventuring here. Yeah, Black's got 2 minutes. White's got a faddled 20 seconds for this game. Black could play something like Rook D4. No, Rook D1. That must be what Stamen was telling me Black should do. Thank you, Stamen. I didn't understand properly. Rook D1 check, trading a rook. So the pawn holds. However, the blockade looks like it's going to hold as well, and all Black's resources are defending this pawn. Doesn't look easy. 9-day, 9-round tournaments for Chess Gone Mad. That is the sweet spot. I agree with you. 2 in the summer also sounds like a pretty sweet summer. That is great. I think Chess Gone Mad's going to have a good summer, folks. I think Chess Gone Mad's going to have a good summer. And we see King Charles Cab at the moment not making progress, just repeating the position here. White tries to improve things with Queen A5, and maybe they should have just stuck to, Queen C2, Queen C3, etc., and wait for Black to find a way to make progress. Now Black's got the option of, Queen coming in here, going after this pawn. Plays A6 for now. This feels somewhat holdable for White. No, White tries to do too much. Tries to do too much, goes after A6. I assume Black could play C4 and sack that pawn. I haven't done a big calculation, folks, but C4 here, 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 here. I mean, we could calculate. We might do, and we might find that the pawn can queen. Hey, Flash Shivam. You should definitely play in the 1700 plus group. Guiyao also has a 9-round tournament coming up. Late July, titled players, 50 out of 300. Wow, that's a strong event. Rook c7, just kind of marking time. Yeah. And white keeps trying to do things. Oh, I know Inferno feels like the clock's just going to go against them, so they have to maybe resolve the game. But if you could just sit tight in positions like this, it gives you a much better chance of holding the game. Like queen e5, black's position is improved, because a queen trade will allow their king to come over and help the pawn. And if you don't trade queens, now you've got this isolated pawn, and the queen's got a better square. So white is slowly making black's position better here. Oh, and again, you don't need to defend that pawn. Just queen, my friend. Queen. Oh, c4. Plays it once the a pawn is safe. But, you know, when you're queening, it doesn't matter how safe the rook pawn is. You just queen. That's it. That's all there is to it. Please don't defend this e5 pawn. Please just queen it. You've got a minute. Endgames are about queening pawns. There we go. Right on, King Charles Cav. King Charles Cav played some parts of this game truly brilliantly. That whole sequence with setting up the c6 pawn into c5, there's some difficult calculations to secure that extra pawn and get into this endgame. So GG to both players. Good game there. How to know when position requires nothing to be done. I guess one way is through experience flash scheme of thumb. Another is when you look at a position and you see that there's really not much you can do or not much your opponent can do. That's a sign it might be one of those positions where, you know, you just want to play a move like queen c2, queen c3. You know, if you don't come up with any good ideas, then you don't have to play some bad idea, right? You can just go back and forth. I mean, one way to know flash Shivam is black had this endgame up a pawn with queen and rook against queen and rook. Like 6 or 7 moves ago, like this. And black's made no progress for 6 or 7 moves. So that would be one way as white to realize that you could just sit around, right? Your opponent, who has the extra pawn, is not doing anything. They haven't gone to a new open file because you would have taken their pawn. They haven't offered a trade. They haven't pushed a pawn. They're literally playing queen c6, queen d6 when they're up a pawn. That's a very good sign that your best chance to hold is to play queen c2, queen c3, I guess. And with that bit of high-level chessery, we're going to head back down to the under 1300 group. I do think I'm going to be called away fairly soon, folks, to, wow, 17 points for Ola Chessbomb. We watched a game of theirs earlier today, and they're going to be winning this arena eventually. I think 5 out of 5. What a score. I am going to be having to go pretty soon to go out with the family to the Sunday Farmers Market here. Oh, thank you, Radio. That's very kind of you. No, unfortunately, I'm not registering for a tournament, Rowdy Rita. I think it's going to be, I think my next chess tournament's actually going to be 2026. I think I'm going to play no tournaments in 2025. That is the sad reality I seem to be facing here. I see no games ongoing in the under 1300 group right now. So maybe I'll go to the 1700. There is a top event going on right now, Flash Shivam. Very exciting Uzbek Chess Cup. Maybe I'll do some commentary on it this coming week. But the timing seems to be wrong because I guess I'm in Hawaii on the opposite side of the world from Uzbekistan. I can't look at it live, but maybe I could not live review some of the better games from it. I don't know if that's good enough or valuable enough, but I think that might be what I'm able to do. Yeah, I could review Prague's game. All right. Let's check a game of KFP on the move, currently in first place in the 13 to 1700 group. And here they've got the white pieces against Emergens. We've got a pretty nice pawn structure for black with this piece on d5, the c pawn backward, and black's b pawn already controlling the c4 square. So first blush looks like a pretty promising structure for black, but white can strike at the position with a4 and c4 and muddle things up. So I would say black's advantage is, if it's there, it's very small for the moment. My instinct would be queen a5, playing against this a4 move. But maybe bishop a3 should also be calculated here. Oh man, Stamen. It's funny you should ask about pineapple. I tasted some pineapple yesterday that was so good it made me wonder if there's anything better in the entire world. And I've never really thought of pineapple as being one of my favorite 2 or 3 things in the world. Any minute now, I think, right? Okay. What time are we?
We're supposed to be in the farmer's market at 9:30, but they want to swim first.
Oh, so we're supposed to quickly jump in right now? Yeah, I always thought, even among fruits, my 2 favorite fruits would have been like, you know, nectarines or peaches, same thing, right? Or cherries. I would have thought that, you know, I don't even know if, and then probably strawberries. I would have thought that pineapples were at best, you know, a 5th to 10th place fruit. And then I had this pineapple yesterday. It was insane, folks. Just so good. Black goes for knight e4, I guess, simplifying. You threaten the c pawn, so then you can make a trade, pick up the bishop pair. A bunch of simplifying happens. And we see like a tiny advantage for black, but white kind of wants to go maybe knight e3, d5 and just trade it out. I don't know that I've ever had an Alfonso mango. I'm not sure. I've had some really good mangoes. I guess anything when it's really fresh is amazingly good, because I've had really good mango sometimes. I guess just live in the moment and enjoy the fruit before you. Knight here. So this is the moment. Black could take the pawn after a rook trade, right? After a rook trade. They could try to take the pawn, line up the bishop and queen, and try and hold on to it. This is like the biggest chance for emergence. So let's calculate it. Excuse me. First of all, you don't go bishop d4 because rook c8. That's the basic, right? Queen c8, rook d4. But if we want to be up a pawn, takes, bishop d4, right? Something like knight c2, and we just go e5. Knight takes, pawn takes, queen here. Well, it's been nice knowing our extra pawn. The extra pawn seems to be gone. Oscar Chess, you're losing some points and having so much fun. Thank you. Thank you for providing such a good example for all of us. Enjoying playing, even if you shed a couple points. Let's have fun, folks. After all, one of the things chess is a game. I don't know if our podcast has come out yet, where we talk about what is chess. Like little philosophy talk. I don't know if that podcast is live yet. I'm thinking it's not. But anyway, one of the things chess is a game, so we should enjoy it and have fun, even if we're losing. Oscar Chess lost to a 1700. That's a 500-point upset, but they played well, so go Dojo. Right on, Oscar. Right on. This looks like this would more or less equalize here for white, right? So, great calculation by KFP on the move. Currently in first place in the 13 to 1700 group. And black doesn't go for bishop d4. Far Eastern says it ain't fun, boss. It can be. It can be. It can be fun. That's what Oscar Chess is telling us. Mostly Feral Cat just threw away a win. Well, we saw you get at least one good win today, Feral Cat. So you may have lost one, but you also got one. All right, for white, what's the next move? I would think something like Queen D2, Queen C4, something like that. Defending the pawn and continuing to fight for the D5 square makes sense. Instead, we get D5, just ignoring the A pawn. Doesn't this give emergence a chance to go up a pawn again? It does. But let's think about the options. Queen A2, you have to worry about D6. So you have to be confident about that. Some people might feel uncomfortable there. Pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn. Queen A2 allows knight F6. Seems like no way is that going to be a winning endgame with queens on the board. And in fact, if we calculate one move further to Queen H6, it's obviously not good. Nothing compares to the fun of crushing an opponent completely and imposing your will. Mwahahahahaha. I did also have pizza yesterday. Just the pizza and the pineapple were not touching. Not touching. Queen A5, D5. If I were black, I would take on A2. I would let that pawn go to D6 and say my bishop is covering the queening square. I'm going to be able to hold that blockade and hopefully win the game with my A pawn. I believe in taking here for black. 100% believe that black can take on A2. And as white, I think D5 was just a little too much verve. I would say Queen C4 and Queen D2 were both very solid moves. We're never going to lose this pawn on D4 anymore. I know it's an isolated pawn, but we don't really need to worry about it. We've got full control of the blockade square. We're always going to be able to play D5. Pineapple pizza is amazing. You know what, Chess Gone Mad? You live in England, so to you, if someone ever puts a pinch of salt on food, that would probably seem amazing. I'm not gonna take that too seriously from a British person. We're just gonna let it slide, Sweet Bell Pepper. I mean, the pineapple in England probably doesn't even taste like pineapple, right? Like, how could it get to England and still be pineapple? Emergence takes, knight takes D5. You're right, Oscar. Oscar's watched thousands of hours of footage. You're almost never going to hear an insult from me. You live in France? What? Your accent is super not French, Chess Gone Mad. Super not French. Man, we could have played chess together last year when I was in France, if you're on the sort of northern area of France near England. Hey, Mickelwold. I am in Hawaii for the summer, so I've shifted the commentary time. I'm running the tournament at the normal time, but my commentary starts 3 hours later than normal because I'm 3 hours later than normal or whatever. Ah, Limoges. That's great. Yes, Indian food in the UK is very good. I agree, HP Bob Dole. I had the pleasure of eating Indian food when I was in England. It was very good. The commentary time has gotten better for people not in the US. And honestly, the commentary time was kind of bad for people in the US to begin with. So now it's just gotten god-awful, but at least it's good for someone. You do not, Coke. You just click whenever you want to start a new game, and it'll pair you whenever one person's available. It won't wait for everybody. Your French accent is like from Jersey. Interesting. I I don't know what a Jersey French accent would be like. But we should talk French next time we spar, and then I'll know. Ah! The knight on d5 was hanging! What is this madness? White's really playing this particular game, although they're winning the tournament. They're playing this game with real disregard for pawns. Here playing f4 instead of trying to just save the knight. And black can trade on d5 and then win a pawn on g5, I imagine, at the end of all this. 10 minutes? Jeez, I'm sorry, that's awful. Oh, wait. However we took back, was there going to be check and takes, huh? Oh, Gers. I don't even know the town of Gers. Gers? Where is this? French department in Occitania. Rural agricultural department in southwest of France named for the Gers River. Known for gastronomy. Ah, I see it on a map too. Okay. That looks like a very nice place, but I mean, they probably have very good weather in Gers. So now we've got like a very interesting queen endgame, after which I will go spend some time with the family. Queen takes g3. So as white here, I think you have to move the A pawn as fast as possible. I don't know much about any queen endings, but my thought here is that as white, you gotta run the A pawn because it's going to be very hard to defend the kingside 3 against 1. Very hard. Black can bring this pawn down first, perhaps, chip at your G pawn and your king. So basically, you need to get this A pawn so close to queening that your opponent gives perpetual, I think. And it's like more or less pointless to defend the king side. So yeah, logical player suggests a4. That looks logical to me. Oscar Chess says the bullet move is queen d3. Well, yeah, that suggests that bullet is not chess. Definitely black's going to be dreaming of winning this endgame. I'd be wanting to win it. We could calculate a4, h5, a5, h4. Then white wants to play a move like queen b5, I guess. So you could answer h3 with queen f5 check and take it. Makes sense to me. Definitely solid chances there. Okay, let's take our line further. a4, h5, a5, h4, queen b5. I'll play g6 to deny the check. a6, h3, queen d5. Queen e3 check, maybe. King moves to h2, hg, king g2. Ooh, it's tough. It's tough. I think that's... I would want to win as black, but I feel like the A pawn is faster than the 3 pawns, so white should be able to get a draw out of this one. What do you guys think is going to happen, though, in the live game before us, you know? Is white going to run the A pawn? Is white going to save the game? Is black going to win? Is somebody going to blunder a queen? Because there's, you know, there's sober assessments of those just watching over the game, and then there's what happens in a real game. Or is chess.com going to stop showing me the moves? There we go. A4, 4-minute thought. Yeah, if black plays hg2, white can keep pushing the a-pawn and not recapture on g2, right? So, if white could trade queens, there are situations where that would be pretty good, yeah. All right, so here we're expecting, I would suggest a queen b5 earlier here. Maybe queen c6 is also a move, I don't know. There could be a repetition at some point, for sure, yeah. Queen f1, this covers some checks against the king and also has this angle of queen f5 to capture the h-pawn. So h3 doesn't work, and it threatens queen f7. So now black might spend a move defending this pawn, then white will play a6. No, black goes h3 anyway. Stopping queen f7 with mate, but queen f5 to h3 should help white. This queen f1 was a very clever move from KFP. And if black goes to the wrong square after queen f5, this is just my analysis for the moment, but like if black plays g6, there's queen h3 and white wins. Ditto on king h8 and king h6. Queen h3 will win. On king g8, there would be queen c8, also winning. King h7, queen h3. Actually, white's winning on almost every single possible move. Wait, maybe white's winning after queen f5. Queen g6 takes, and just push. Oh my god. Is queen f5 winning here? Queen f5, king h8 I win, king h6 I win, pawn g6 I win, king g8 I win. Queen f5 wins. So queen f3 not bad either. Well, here we should really play queen f5. Queen f5, king g6. Yeah, but that's illegal. When a queen comes at you on a diagonal, I know it's angering for the king, but he can't run straight at her just because he's mad. a6. Ignoring the chance to win the game. And ignoring any threats that black thinks they might be doing, you know, just boldly use. This was the general plan that we suggested for white. KFP is like, has nailed the general plan, right? Which is run the a-pawn just to oblivion. That's absolutely the right idea. But queen f5 here was a winning move. Amazing. So you see there's the theoretical level, and then we get to see what actually happens in the game. And there's interesting little details and calculations that come up again and again as the game is progressing. Moves that are easier and harder to find, etc. And that's all part of the texture of chess. Right. Yeah, I understand the thought process, Sweet Bell Pepper. I also thought there was no way queen f5 was winning at first. I was like, okay, king h8 loses to queen h3, but there must be some good move for the king, right? There's got to be like a way not to blunder into whatever, but there's no way. Okay, we get a6. We get check. King h1. I assume now black will trade with check. Yeah, king g8, there was queen c8 check, forcing the king back to h7. And then queen h3 anyway. Forcing the queen trade and winning with the a-pawn. I'm feeling that either player could win or lose this game at this point. Black plays queen e4, covering queen f5, keeping the tension here. Should white's pawn keep going? I feel yes. There is also maybe this queen f3 move to consider at some point. Takes a lot of calculation. Okay, I know we can't play queen f7, queen g2. Everything else is pretty tricky to calculate. But all else being equal, I do like a7. So I don't think queen f3 is going to force a queen trade. Black will trade on g2 and then move their queen somewhere. I do believe in white's drawing chances. This pawn is so close. I don't think white should be losing. And then any queen trade's winning for white, so tactically that's the third result that black has to watch out for. So a7, you know, with fair chances. Takes very little for that pawn to then queen at some point. And we get a7 from KFP on the move. Also black now under 20 seconds, so we see white, you know, leveraging their time to think about these moves, and black does not have that luxury anymore, so they're going to have to just blitz everything without blundering here. Oh my god, 5 seconds. HG2, and white had a pre-move ready. Black tries to fight back. White has a choice between queen g1 and king h2. Basically, black has to give a perpetual check right now because this pawn is queening, right? Black has to just give a perpetual right away. And if black ever goes queen h4, there will be a queen, you know, to h2 or h3 or something. So black has to give all the checks on the side, you know, from the e file. And I think it's just enough, you know, king h2, queen e5, queen g3, queen e2, etc. I think there is a perpetual here. Here you got to go to e4, not h4, right? You got to just always stay on the e file, and then I think that does it. I think queen e1 here is a draw. Emergence manages to hold it together with seconds on the clock. So we'll clap it up for the sang-froid there. Keeping their cool with no time on the clock. And we see how this endgame could, in theory, you know, end in a draw. Very reasonable, right? White pushes the a pawn. It's close enough to queening that black doesn't have time to bring these two pawns down to inexorably win, and they have to give a perpetual at some point. That's kind of the logical result of the game. Yes, there were some tactical trickeries along the way, and that's chess. I quickly found by considering forcing moves first always. No, I don't always consider forcing moves first always. I don't have like a checklist, but I planned the idea of queen f5 in advance, so that's why I saw it instantly, because I'd seen it on a previous... I'd been planning... I'd thought of black wanting to play h5, h4, h3, and I thought of how could white slow or stop the idea. And the threat of queen f5 was the idea I'd come up with to slow or stop h3. So it was already on my mind from before. All right, we're going to send the Twitchers on a little raid somewhere.